Hey, what's going on? Welcome to the channel. My name is Michael, and we are dedicated to helping you scale your business through virtual events like webinars, challenges, multiple day events. And in this video, it's going to be very cool because I'm actually going to show you live, start to finish, how we're going to scale a client up to 10,000 leads. Now, our job is obviously to pack this with as many leads as possible, right? One of the ways that we do that is through paid advertising. So I'm going to walk you step by step by step on how we actually start, launch, scale the ads to get to 10,000 leads over the next 10 days, right? So we're going to start this today, and then every couple days I'm going to join again, and this is literally going to be a live scale. So if I don't hit 10,000 leads, you're going to know it. I'm going to know it. Everybody's going to know it. But if I can't hit 10,000 leads, I'm going to show you the exact steps that I take every single time that we have to do something like this at the multitude of 10,000 leads to hopefully pull in over $500,000 from one single webinar, right? So first off here, I'm going to open up my notebook here. All right, so there are going to be three things that we're going to want to look for before we even start running ads or doing anything, right? The first one is going to be your prep, right? And prepping means scripts and videos. Now, when you look at something this magnitude, when you're doing $70,000, $80,000 worth of spend in such a short period of time, you need a lot of videos, right? And so what we like to do is we like to do 10 to 12 videos, 12 to 12 scripts for our client. Now, within those scripts, there are usually 2 to 3 hooks, right? And so these videos can turn into about 20 to 30 different variations of videos. Now, this allows us to filter in a lot of videos over the 10 days that we advertise, right? Because if you only have 2 or 3 videos, they're going to burn out after about 10K, and then you're not going to be able to keep that cost low for it to make sense effectively when you're scaling, right? Now, the second thing that we want to look for is our timeline. So timeline basically just means like how far out do we need to start advertising, right? One of the issues with people is that they don't realize that the 70 or 80K needs to be spent in a short window, but it also can't be spent too long because people won't show up. So it can't be spent too short, it can't be spent too long, right? If it's 2-3 weeks out when you start advertising, the people who sign up 3 weeks out, they're probably not going to show up, right? They have a lower likelihood. The people closer to signing up to the date, let's say they sign up the day of or the day before, they have a higher likelihood of actually showing up to the event because they don't have to wait all that time, right? And so basically what we look at is, let's say this is a timeline, right? This is 10 days and this is day of the webinar, right? If you're only spending, let's say $5,000, $10,000 on a webinar, you can launch about 5 to 7 days, right? It's really not that big a deal to launch at like 5 days or 7 days before. If you're only spending like 5 to 10K, right? That's easy to do right here. But when you're over here at $80,000, you have to make sure that you're at least 10 days. And I don't like to be any further than that because I notice that people don't show up. So this right here is where we want to be, is at that 10-day mark if we're going to spend something like this. Now, number 3 comes down to math, right? It's important to know what you want to hit and then what, like, reverse engineer it all the way back to say, how many leads do I need? How many book calls do I need? And then how much do I need to spend per day in order to hit the goals that we want to hit, right? And so I'm going to jump into like a math slide here so you can kind of see what that looks like. All right, so this is the scale math that is going to be needed in order for us to hit our goal. So let's say, for example, we want to hit $500,000, right? In order to hit $500,000, you have to look at like your price, and you want to look at the historical data of your team, like the closing percentage or however like you convert on the webinar. So our product price, $8,000, right? Product sold, if we typically will close at about a 30% on webinars, we're looking at 63 sales. Now booked, we usually book about 10%, 8 to 10% of the people that show up, they end up booking, right? Now this fluctuates a lot, right? So this is just going to be math. You want to make sure that you look at your numbers, not necessarily these, because I have clients that will do like 20% booked, right? But they won't be able to get the same cost per lead. It's every single webinar, every client is very different, right? So 208 booked calls we need from this webinar in order to hit 63 sold at 30%. Now that means that if we have 2,000 people show up at that 10%, that's where we're going to get 208. So we need at least 2,000 people to show up. Now, if 25% of people show, right, we need 8,325 leads, right? That would be a lead cost. Let's say worst case scenario, $10 a lead. We need to spend $83,000 to hit 500K, right? And so you need to map out what that looks like on a day-to-day basis in terms of spend, right? And so day one, 2,000. And if you're gonna do 30% per day, then this is kind of the growth, right? Every single day you do about 30%. And now it's not gonna be perfect at 30% every day, just to be clear, but this is good for you to know, to reverse engineer, to know how much you have to start with. Like if you start with 500 bucks a day, something like this, you might be in some trouble, right? So you need to start at least $2,000 a day. And so as you scale, you can see all the way up to day 10 at $21,000 a day, you are now spending $85,000, which is very, very, very close to this. Now, when you get to this point, you may not need to spend 21,000. You may end up spending like 5,000, like on this day or this day, right? But this is just a good way of reverse engineering how much you have to start with. Like this is so important to understand what you need to start with, because if you do not start with the right amount, it will be very, very, very hard to get the right amount of leads at the right cost with the spend without blowing through your spend and having like a $15 or $20 cost per lead, which is just not going to happen, right? You would basically like not break even, but you'd make like a 2x ROI, which is not okay, right? All right, so the next thing are the videos, right? And so the prep that we talked about in number one, basically you have to get at least 15, 20, 30 videos in order to scale at this magnitude while keeping the cost low. And so for us, you can see right here, here are all the videos that we had our clients shoot. There are 12 different scripts. Within each of these, there are multiple hooks, right? And this is just the client filming, right? What we also do is we couple them with faceless reels, right? Have you ever seen faceless reels? It's basically like B-roll or lifestyle content, and there's like text over it, right? The cool thing about that is it does not require the client, right? So we ask the client to do all of this, and then we also put the faceless reels, which add another like 10, 15 videos, and those actually usually perform the best. And you'll see how they perform as we start to scale these out. But I love doing those. They're kind of a bitch to make, but this is what we do at first, right? This is the very beginning. We usually launch the client videos first, and then we filter in some of those faceless reels as we start to see those results, and if we need to put them in faster than later, right? So you can see inside of here, there's 12 of them, and each one is hook 1, 2, 3. Some don't have 3, some have 1, some have 2. But overall, we're gathering about 20 to 30 videos from the client themselves, right? So the next thing that we're going to do is I'm actually going to jump into the ads manager, and you can watch me launch these ads live and look how we do it. And then in the future videos, you're going to see part 2, 3, 4, 5, where every couple of days I'm going to jump in here and I'm going to show every single day of scaling and adding and how we're going to get to the point of spending 80, getting 8 to 10,000 leads, and hopefully doing over $500,000 from the webinar, right? And I'm going to go through the kind of structure that we use. Now, to preface this, every ad account is different. Every ad account behaves differently. And so you need to understand your ad account or whatever ad account that you're in. This one, for example, if we spend above 150 or 200 bucks a day to start, we usually see that the cost per lead goes up about 20 to 30%. Now, we don't like that, right? When we start these and we have to get to 10,000 leads, sub $10 cost, we have to make sure that we start at like a $6.5 or a $4. Like we have to be like sub $6 in order at scale to be around like 10 bucks, right? And so we found that 150 bucks is the sweet spot to where the cost is not too expensive, where we can spend as much as we can with a low cost, right? And so that means that if we're only 150 bucks per audience, we have to have 12 to 15 audiences, right? So we've set up 15 different audiences here in the account. I'll go over a couple different types. So number one, what we do is like a broad audience, right? Now we test this audience plus, audience plus on, audience plus off. Test it on your own, see what it looks like in your account. Some accounts do great, some accounts don't do great with it. Audience plus, all that means is like Facebook is gonna like veer off of what you give it. Like if you say, hey, I want 25 to 30-year-olds, it might go after like some 20-year-olds and some like 35-year-olds, right? And so test that out, see if it works for you. We do have a few with this on, but a lot of them are actually off. But here is basically like the broad audience, right? So we're going after real estate investing. And so this is just a broad ass audience of 27 million people to 31 million people, right? And so this is really good if you have good content that's going to be attracting the right type of person, because you basically say like, Facebook, do your thing, right? Like we want you to go do your thing and find the right people for us, get in front of the right people that are interested, and will give us the cheapest cost, right? So there's one. And then what we also do is we do like more of a detailed stack in some of these, right? So some of these where it's like, this is a broad one, excuse me. This is real estate investing broad again. If we look at a detailed stack right here. So detailed stack basically is just like a little bit more detailed, right? So we're going after real estate. So there's creative real estate, there's property investing club, real estate investment association, real estate investing club, real estate investment trust. Like they're like a little bit more detailed type of audiences, not just one big broad one, right? And so you can see this one has 13 million to 16 million. So still a really good amount of people that we're going to give Facebook. I always also like to use our age at about 25 and up, right? Like I don't like to do anything below 25. This client sells an $8,000 product. So most of the time, anybody below 25 not going to have the money, right? So we do 25 and up. Now, Facebook will also get in front of the people that are highest likely to convert based on like who you are as the personal brand, what's in your ads, who you're speaking to, right? So be very careful about your messaging over your targeting. Your targeting really isn't as big a deal as your messaging. If you're messaging, talking to broke people, talking to youngins, like you're gonna get stuck with a bunch of youngins, right? So make sure that you're talking to the right people, right? And you as a personality attract a certain type of person, or your client also attracts a certain type of person. To keep that thing in mind, because that'll be a big factor when you're running ads as well. If you can't figure out, hey, I'm targeting the right people, like it doesn't matter because your client attracts this type of person, and you need to be aware of that, right? And so what we do is in each one of these, we have typically anywhere between 3 to 5 videos in each one, right? I like to do that because I find that when you launch, the one video that typically will like start winning is the one that like will just continuously win. And if you remove that one, the other ones kind of suck. So I don't want to stack too many of them together, because if you stack 10 videos, there's one of them that wins. For some reason, it feels like it like the other ones are all tainted, like just they don't work, right? So I like to do 3 to 5. That also gives Facebook enough opportunity to test them out, but not too many videos to where like a couple of them don't get any spend whatsoever, right? And so all I would do is if I'm using 4 or 5 videos of this one, I would just create another campaign with 4 or 5 videos, so it gives Facebook the opportunity twice to test that out instead of all of those batched into one big audience, right? And so there's a few ways to do this. In certain accounts, we use this thing called dynamic creative. I haven't been as big of a fan of this recently because you can kind of create your own dynamic creative. All this means is like you give Facebook a bunch of ad copy, a bunch of headlines, and you give them a bunch of videos, and then it like basically just does its thing and goes out into the world and like tests all of them out. There's like 100 and something, 200 variations of it, and they'll just test it for you, right? Now, the cool thing about that is you can obviously let Facebook find the best result for you. The thing I don't like about dynamic creative is that if it's not performing, you can't go in and turn off the video that's underperforming, because they're all just in a big batch, right? And so what I like to do is I actually like to batch them out separately in certain ads, but you can still get the dynamic creative effect by doing this, right? And so when we do that, what we do is we upload one video, right? But each video has at least 3 to 5 primary text, like the body copies, right? So you can see what Facebook will allow you to do is kind of it's a nice mix between dynamic creative, where it just tests it all, to where you can forcefully say, hey, this video, but test all of these headlines and ad copies with it, right? And so check it out. So you've got 3 of these. Then we also do about 3 headlines every single time, right? And by doing that, again, Facebook will test the headlines, test the body copies with that one video, right? And so what that allows us to do is with all 4 of these videos, let's say hook 1 started shitting the bed. I can turn hook 1 off, and these can still run. Dynamic creative, you can't turn any videos off. You have to turn off the entire campaign, and I don't like that, right? Or excuse me, the entire ad set, and I don't like that. So what I want to do is I set them up like this, but I also make sure that there's at least 3 to 5 here in headlines, 3 to 5 body copies right here, right? And then of course, at the bottom here, you put your URL to go to the page. And I'll show you real quick our URL. One of the cool things that we're doing with this specific client is we're doing a free workbook that goes with the training, right? And so we've done this a few times with clients, and we all usually find this work really well, because what happens is like in the ads, you can actually show the workbook, and then this gives them like a tangible that they get. Like they actually get something, whether it's a PDF, it doesn't matter, but they actually get something instead of like, hey, show up to this training and learn. Hey, show up to this training, get this free workbook, or get this free book that I just put together when you join this training. So they kind of have like a tangible that they get for showing up too. It's not just, hey, show up and sit here and learn. It's, hey, show up, get this workbook, go through the workbook during the training so you can get the best result, right? And so really cool tip. These work really well. We don't use this with every webinar, just to be clear, because it would overdo it. But this is a good one because 2025 usually balls out at the very, very beginning of January. So usually balls out. And obviously it's 2025 here, right? So now once we do this, what we're going to do is we're going to publish these ads here. Let them publish up 1 out of 6. So you can see all of these are going to publish right here. All right, so now that this is published, what I want to do is instead of going in every single one of these, just like a little hack for when you're running ads, instead of going in every single one of these and having to rebuild it out, I'm just going to choose this one. It's going to go over here. You're going to choose all of these. You're going to duplicate it. and then you're going to do existing campaign. You're going to say select all here, and then you're going to remove it from the one that you're just doing right now, and you're just going to say duplicate. Now that'll just duplicate it across all of these, right? So you don't have to spend hours rebuilding every single one of them, and you can just publish, right? All right, so now you can see this is the campaign. Inside of that campaign, we've got 15 different audiences, all at $150 a day. And in that, in total, you're looking at 60 different ads, right? And within each ad, it has variations of three headlines, three body copies. And so like there's tons of variations that are going to be going on. But overall, in the next 24 to 48 hours, we're going to have a really good idea of what our cost will be, and we can start to scale at that point. So tune in to the next video, where the next video I'm going to be coming back into here, showing you the results and where we're at, and then I'm going to be going over what happens next, what kind of ads we're launching, how many ads we're launching, and then over the course of the next 10 days, every couple days, I will be right back here to show you live so you can see what it looks like from start to finish at doing over 10,000 people to a webinar with over $500,000, hopefully, if all things pan out correctly. All right, thank you so much for watching. Tune in for part 2. See you later.